Thanks for joining, and thank you, Pat, for coming. This is Pat Smith, everybody. Pat is one of the founders and the CEO of Serve Denton. I don't know if y'all have heard of it. It's this big nonprofit in town that works with other nonprofits to make services more accessible. It's a great model, I think, for all cities to have. Anyway, my coffee hasn't kicked in yet. But anyway, I'll let Pat go ahead and take it off. And for those of you I haven't met, I think I've met everybody though. I'm Madi. I'm the Events and Hospitality Coordinator at Stoke. So, good morning.
Well, good morning. Thanks for the opportunity to spend some time with you, just visiting. Serve Denton started as a startup in 2012. We had $5,000 in a bank account and no employees. Today have about a balance sheet of about $8.8 million and a 5-acre campus with 48,000 square feet of space, 23 partner agencies. We just had the city of Plano in yesterday. They're wanting to create their own Serve Denton Center, and so we're asking for some advice. They're today where I was 8 years ago, and having been raised by 3 generations of small business owners, my great-grandfather, grandfather, and my parents both owned small businesses in Denton. Mom owned a store called Rose Costumes, you may have heard of. At one point, she was the oldest woman-owned, longest-serving or longest women-owned business in Denton. And again, started from nothing and built it into now it's a 1,000 square foot business on the north side of town. And my dad had a small restaurant on Fry Street back when Fry Street was cool. It's not cool anymore. It's just commercialized. So, he had a line out his door every morning at 7 a.m. His biscuit recipes, when you go to Loco Cafe, they serve his biscuit recipe at Loco Cafe. And if you go in the big room, past the main dining room into the room in the back, and you look up on the wall, you'll see a picture of a lady holding a picture of a guy, and that guy is dad. So that's why that's there. So
that's awesome.
I do a lot of consulting with small businesses in the area on the side, and kind of think of Serve Denton as a small business. In a lot of ways it is. We're just a nonprofit landlord and real estate developer, but we really try to generate a net income. That's nonprofit terms for profit. We're now growing into shared services, which is new for us, but something that we're excited about, helping marketing, financial management, development. And development in nonprofit world looks a little different than in the business sector, where you're trying to recruit donors and build partnerships with businesses. But the transaction's a little different in that they're making donations to you and then you're providing services. So there's not this one-to-one exchange. But donors are looking for an exchange. It's just in a different form, and that's a philanthropic exchange versus a business exchange. So I want to share a couple things. I've been talking to Stoke about a initiative we started with Toyota. We're now an official training location for Toyota. If you're not familiar with Toyota, they are widely considered one of the best managed companies in the world. And they have been literally hundreds of books published about how they go about their business. It's called the Toyota Production System. And they've come in and taught that up with us. Actually, we're going to be here today for another training session. And it's an ongoing effort, but we've adopted what's known as Toyota Production System, or TPS. And it's all about providing value to the customer by eliminating waste. And I often find in the nonprofit sector, there's a lot of waste And it's a hard idea for nonprofits to get their mind around, but if you really start looking, it's very easy to see. And so one of my suggestions recently at the Big Idea meeting was how do you share TPS with other organizations, both for-profit and nonprofit, and so that they can grow. And the great thing about it is that it gives you a competitive advantage if you do it well, and it really doesn't cost a lot. It's hard work though, and it's not easy, but I can tell you for my team, and they've all bought into it and they love it. It strengthens your muscles of having good conversations and problem solving, and really understanding what your customer values and then how to generate more value for them. And by doing so, you're reducing that waste, reducing costs, and hopefully in the long term, earning more profit. So I'm going to stop talking there and just see if there's any questions or thoughts you have, or anything you'd like to chat about.
I think we should start by everyone introducing themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. So whoever wants to jump in first. And maybe a little bit about, why you attended today, if there's
Nancy, how about you go first?
Am I first on your screen?
Yeah.
I'm first on my screen, but I think that's how it's set up. Hi, Pat. So my name is Cassie Hudson. Right now, I'm a data analyst with the Center for Learning, Experimentation, Application, and Research at UNT. So I do educational research there. I spoke the last time that I was here about ultimately what I would like to do is to create a board game cafe in Denton. And I have a lot of interest in nonprofits as well. And I'm wondering if it's possible to try to build some kind of hybrid model to where there's a nonprofit aspect of this. I do know an example of this that's been successful in Omaha, Nebraska. They have, there's a board game cafe and library called Spielbound, which has both a for-profit cafe part and also a nonprofit part that provides like game development services and learning opportunities for children, and also kind of like stay sharp groups for elderly individuals. So I'm really interested in trying to explore that, and that's why I was so interested in coming today, kind of see the nonprofit scene in Denton.
Yeah. And do you work with Mike Simmons at all? Do you know who Mike Simmons is?
I do know who Mike Simmons is. We have worked together, but we're not in the same department, though sometimes our work does overlap a bit.
Yeah, I was going to say, because he's in ed tech, but it's more on the portfolio.
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm. All right. Pamela, how about you?
Hey, everybody. Hey, Pat. I joined Leadership Denton, and so you were in on our last Zoom meeting, and I guess unfortunately that was the first time I'd heard about you. I think everybody else in there knew who you were, so Donna Lisa told me about this meetup, and thought I'd get to know you a little bit better, and I know you have a lot of good input for us on our class project this year.
Well, excited. I think you're going to have a great class and a great class project, and looking forward to getting to know you better through that. What do you do? What's your business? Or what do you do?
I work for Berry Aviation.
Oh, okay.
And I'm an aircraft dispatcher. So I worked at the Denton Airport for 17 years up until just recently. And now I'm in an office building near Razor Ranch area.
Okay.
Been in Denton a long time. I remember Fry Street when it was cool.
Yeah.
And Loco Cafe is my favorite place.
Good. I saw you kind of clapped your hands there. So yes. Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
You bet. Hey, Donna Lisa.
Hey, Pat. So I'm Donna Lisa Stinyard. I'm with the Texas Women's University Center for Women Entrepreneurs, and also part of Leadership Denton Class 36. And I'm super excited about the project. And I came on here, I wanted to get to know you better. I'm fairly new to the Denton area, retired military. My husband and I relocated here a couple years ago.
Okay.
So really wanting to learn more about you and Serve Denton, and just, somebody that's been here in this community for as long as you have, kind of getting your perspective on Denton and how we can make it better. And as an entrepreneur at heart, I get the opportunity to help women start and grow their business here at the center, as well as I have my own leadership coaching business.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm having lunch with Mary Ann tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
So she and I have become good friends, and love what you guys do at the center, and can't commend you enough for that. That's something I know my mom wish she had when she was starting out 42 years ago, and there was no resources like that. She just made it up as she went. And
oh, I know. When you mentioned that, I was like, man, that's yeah. And I mean, it was tough back then. And so I'm really glad to be a part of the center, and then our institute as a whole, and
right.
everything that we're doing for our community. So
absolutely.
Yeah, it was nice to meet you.
Same here. Lacey, how about you?
Good morning. I am Stokes Marketing and Member Coordinator. I'm happy to be here. And it was really interesting to hear about your family's history in Denton. I didn't know all of that. So super cool. And I was really interested also in kind of the lean thinking applications that businesses and, organizations can employ. My partner works for the SBA, and
okay,
part, so we decompress from work and we talk about all of those things. And I wonder sometimes, like, why, there's that saying, like, always question when someone says we've always done things this way. So
absolutely.
So super interesting to hear about all of that and your processes and decisions. And of course, it's just great to hear from other Dentonites.
Great. So I'm not sure how this goes, other than I can just share some things we're working on that you might be interested in.
So it's normally just kind of an open discussion. If anyone has any specific questions you want to ask Pat, or questions or advice or insight, anything like that. It's also, we could talk about lean thinking if you want, kind of just free flowing. I do have a quick question for you though. My partner wanted me to ask you. So Serve Denton always has such a success on North Texas Giving Day. And I'm wondering if y'all have any like particular strategies that you use, or.
Yes, we do. That's a great question. And we, a long time ago, when North Texas Giving Day first got started, and it's only been going since I think 2010, 2011, but what we learned is you have to be very intentional and very focused on it. A lot of organizations, I think, say, oh yeah, we'll sign up, and then they just expect people to give, and that doesn't work. You have to have what the marketing world would call what's your pitch or what's your angle. And so we actually start planning for North Texas Giving Day in July. 1st of July, we kick off a team. So Ian Harbour is my communications person. And we also have a copywriter now. Her name's Caitlin Lambert in Dallas. And they basically spent the first 3 weeks of July developing what our pitch was this year. And we always try to tweak it a little bit. And then we generate all the social media content. We put out a letter to all of our donors in late August. And it's basically, we have literally a schedule. And this goes back to this whole idea of lean thinking. So at the heart of lean thinking is what's known as the PDCA cycle: plan, do, check, adjust. And it started with really going back to Bell Labs in the 30s, and then a guy named Edward Deming in the 40s was hired by the US government to go to Japan to help rebuild the Japanese economy, and he taught them this whole cycle. It's called the Deming cycle, PDCA: plan, do, check, act. So we everything we do, we start with a plan. And we planned out every day starting August 1st through North Texas Giving Day of what we were going to do. And then we create specific posts of telling a series of stories and building up to that point. And what we find is it's engaging people. We have to connect with people in different ways. We're doing podcasts, we're doing blogs, we're doing letters to donors, and that all builds up to that day. And so every year we've added, about 10 to 20% to our previous year in terms of donors and dollars. And that's been just very helpful. And I think I was concerned that this year would be down because of the economy, but we went up considerably. And there was other agencies that didn't go up and didn't hit their goal. So very thankful for that. But being able to have that plan and always know where we are in relation to that plan. Are we on track? Or are we not? We use very simple tools. It's not in a spreadsheet, it's on a wall, but it works. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's really helpful. Just the foresight that you have planning it and everything.
Yeah. You know when it is. You register in the spring and you just say, okay, start in July. And I basically block out staff time and say, okay, this is your focus for the next 2 months is North Texas Giving Day. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Hi, Stacy.
Hi, Stacy.
Yeah. I don't think we've met yet.
We have not. Hello. Hi, everyone. A friend of mine sent me a link to this, and so I wanted to jump on. This is my first time visiting. So hi, my name is Stacy Givens, and I run the Givens Consulting Group. It's a diversity and inclusion focused group for women in communities of color and corporate spaces.
Awesome. Thank you. Do you have any questions for Pat? Anything? Not to put you on the spot. I guess I'm just saying that this is just an open floor discussion. So if you have anything you want to bring up, feel free to.
I will. Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Sure.
It's a leadership question. So how did people don't like change and they like it even less when it wasn't their idea.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you, I guess, basically get their buy-in to the TPS, to the Toyota way of doing things?
Excellent question. And frankly, it wasn't initially easy. My staff actually was very resistant to it at first. Just to give you a little context, my board, the Serve Denton board, basically at the end of 2019 said we need, and I raised this as a weakness, is that we didn't have a way to measure the satisfaction of our tenants, our partner agencies. We weren't, if you said, how good of a job are you doing, Pat? I'd say, I think we're doing okay, but I don't know. And to me, that was a weakness. And so we launched an initiative in the start of the year to, one, build a system to collect that data in a very organized, quantitative manner. But at the same time, I said, collecting that data is useless if I don't have a structure to improve. How do I improve performance based on the feedback that I'm getting? And so I reached out to Toyota and I said, we could use your help. You're the best managed company in the world by most people's opinion. How do we improve? And I knew quite a bit about Toyota on a superficial level, but not in the weeds. And so they came in and we had to go through a series of interviews. It wasn't like they just showed up on our door. We had to convince them that we were worth of their time. And then the staff was concerned about the workload and, what is it we were going to learn? But what happened is they came and they literally spent a week on site with you, and it's all free. It doesn't cost you a dime. But they they ask a lot of really hard questions. They ask a lot of hard questions about processes. And I liken Serve Denton to where we've been building stuff for a long time. That's like laying a railroad track. And yeah, you get to a certain point and you're done. There's no more track to lay, at least for the time being. But now our job was to help make sure the trains ran on time. And those are very different skill sets, very different mindsets. And so it all starts with mindset of how was our approach? What was our mental model? And they came in and said, you know, you got to start creating better processes. We had processes, but they were not well documented. We didn't have standards. Like, how fast should a customer expect when they submit a work request if they have something fixed? What's the reasonable time frame for that to get repaired? So we had to build all that. In the process of building that, the staff bought in because it gave them predictability. They were moving away from being reactive to proactive. When we made that transition, everyone bought in immediately because we were no longer fighting fires. We're getting ahead of the customer and providing better quality. And the partners started saying, man, things look really good, or thank you for, you know, being on top of things. And when you get that feedback from your customers, people are going to just immediately say, yeah, that works. And we actually saved $8,000 in cost by going to Toyota. We literally reduced our man hours. We weren't having to work as hard. And so all those, and I was giving more authority to the staff to solve problems. And so all those things combined helped them buy into this whole idea.
Yeah, and we have a great question from Lacey in the chat. She says she'd be interested to know what it was like documenting those kinds of standard operating procedures, especially as your team grew/grows. And from the Stoke experience, going from a team of 1 to a team of 2 and now to a team of 3, there's a lot to capture in terms of SOPs. So
yeah, we're still capturing those SOPs. In fact, we were working on that yesterday. But what it really started off as is getting some basic things done. And I'm going to pull up a slot graphic real quick to show you.
I can, let me,
yeah, I'll need.
Yes, you can share your screen. You're good.
Okay, let me go get it real quick. Here we go. So when Toyota came in and talked to us, they talked to us about creating a house. And the first thing that we had to do is understand what our customers valued. And we thought we knew, but we weren't sure. And so in February, we brought in all of our partners for a half a day. We had it up this is right before the pandemic hit. And it was at the Apogee Stadium, and we spent 4 hours with board members and staff just finding out what our partners valued the most. And out of that, 4 things came across. One, they appreciate the high quality of the space. And quality, they got specific about what that quality meant. That it was clean, it was neat. When you walked in, everything was set and organized. And that things, there wasn't, the bathrooms weren't dirty. That's the biggest issue, that bathrooms that are dirty. Then it was low cost, not the lowest cost, but low costs, that they were able to put more dollars towards services because they weren't having to pay rent. Shortest lead time, even though they're paying a low cost, they still want things fixed quickly. And then the last and probably the most important thing, and I think this really applies to Stoke, is they want the importance of a supportive community. They just didn't want an office. They wanted an office where people could have lunch together and commiserate, and dealing with people's problems, you sometimes have to be able to vent and know that, hey, I can walk down the hall and get advice from Pat or someone else. And so those were the 4 big things we really came out of that February meeting understanding. Then what we had been working on the center column, that mutual trust amongst our partners and amongst my team, really using Patrick Lencioni's book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, learning to trust one another, learning how to have good conflict, building commitment and accountability. If those things aren't there, all this other stuff is not going to matter. From there, we worked on the just-in-time and Jidoka. Jidoka is basically creating systems that make problems visible. And these are very low-tech systems. Everything that we do is on the wall. We have checklists and pictures of what a room should look like and what we call 5S. So 5S stands for sort, set in order, shine, standardize, and sustain. And so every room, every space in the building's 5S. We know exactly what it should look like at the start of every day. And we're teaching that to our partners, actually. And they've kind of bought into that. And so that's where the beginning of that, which goes to your question of how do you develop these standard work processes, is really you're trying to identify abnormalities. And that it's not complicated. It's really making things visible. So we think of problems as treasure. How do we find treasure is to make them as visible as possible. So that's Jidoka. On the other side is just in time. And so in just in time, we're trying to move away from just buying a bunch of stuff and then having it sit around to buying just what we need, the right amount at the right time. It's a very different mindset. And it's took a lot of time to work through that, but we've moved into that and we're seeing a significant reduction in our costs, our operating costs, because we're not buying things like we used to. And we're making sure that it's the right stuff at the right time. I could spend 3 or 4 hours on this slide, but at a high level, that standardized work that you see down at the bottom really begins with how do you make problems visible and how do you make sure you're just buying what you need at a given point in time. Like I said, we could talk about this endlessly, but that standardized work and its stability is really key. You can't improve until you have something set in place. And again, it's just about how do you make problems easy to see.
Awesome, thank you. Do you want to keep sharing your screen?
Yeah, there it goes. Did I answer your question, Lacey?
Yes, it did. Thank you. Especially that note on abnormalities was really helpful just because, you know, from the day to day, things become routine. But when new things come up or something unexpected comes up, then that's kind of when, if you don't have a plan in place, you scramble or you think, where do we go from here? Especially, you know, with the pandemic this year. So
absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, look, give you another example of how anal we've gotten. Like every place where there's a bottle of hand sanitizer, we have an orange decal on the counter that shows hand sanitizer is supposed to be there. So the staff knows if they ever see orange, something's missing. And their job, I don't care what they're doing, their job is to fix that immediately. And they do. And so we keep, you know, just those, it becomes automatic to implement these processes because we've made it a practice to, when we see a problem, we stop and fix it right then. We don't let it go by.
We have a question in the chat from Cassie. So she says, you mentioned the 5 dysfunctions of a team. Are there any other books or resources you'd recommend on this process or TPS?
Well, 5 dysfunctions is not TPS specific. The TPS books I would recommend you start off with is Lean Thinking. Right here, this came out in 1995. If you want to use my copy, you're welcome to. I have pretty much every book that's ever been written on the subject now. And then from there, if you really want to go back to the original guy, the author was called, or the creator of TPS was Taiichi Ono. And this idea that I proposed at the Big Idea event was called the Ono Circle. And what Ono taught their managers is they first have to learn to see, then learn to do. And what he would do is he would draw a circle on the floor anywhere in the factory, and he would make his young managers stand in that circle for 8 hours a day. And now they had to take notes on a specific process they would watch for 8 hours a day for a week. And out of that, they had to come back to him with 50 ideas to improve that process. And if they didn't have 50, they had to go back and keep doing it until they came up with 50. What he was trying to teach them to do is to learn, before you start solving a problem, is you have to observe and understand the problem. And often we jump to a solution other than taking the time to understand what are the root causes of the problem. And so that really gets into what Ono taught, and that's what lean thinking is about, is understanding root causes. Because if you understand the root causes, the solution jumps out at you. Let me give you an example that we're doing right now. So after our first project with Toyota, we'd gotten our maintenance guy's production time up. He's got 20 hours in a week. When we started, he was only spending about 8 hours a week doing productive maintenance. He was spending the other 12 hours a week chasing stuff, looking for supplies. It's called sharking, swimming around looking for stuff. So what we were able to do is get him from that 8 hours up to 16 hours of productive time by doing these things. So the question was, how do I get him from 16 hours to 18 hours? Well, we found out that those 2 hours a week were spent in meetings. And we said, is that value added time? And the answer was not really. And so now we've been going through an initiative where across the staff, we've reduced meeting time by half to make making those meetings more productive. And we just did it in September. We had our results yesterday, and we're at 80 hours a month in meeting time. We reduced that to 37. Everyone was ecstatic. Everyone loves it because they're more productive. They like me because I'm a great boss, because I don't make them sit in stupid meetings anymore. And now the next thing we're doing is, how do we standardize those meetings? How do we make those meetings more efficient? Not just having an agenda, but having a trained process in each meeting. So everyone knows exactly what they're supposed to do. Almost like a play. Each one has a role, and what's their role, or what's their script in that meeting. The words may change, but the role doesn't. So that's a really easy example of how I've taken a guy that was having 8 hours of productive time. Now he's up to 18 hours of productive time, and he's happier, the staff's happier, and we're doing a better job for our customer. And it costs nothing. That makes sense? So start with this and then come see me.
Pat, I think that's so helpful. I've come from software development as well as optical manufacturing most recently. And our leadership had us read the book, The Goal. And then we went to Autoleave, who supplies airbags to Toyota, among other auto manufacturers. And we watched exactly what you're talking about, the Kaizen processes that they put in place. And those are principles that you can use anywhere. The whole point was make things visible for people, have those work processes and job aids at people's fingertips, and they didn't rely a whole lot on computer systems.
Right.
That's always the go-to, right? And they said, no,
Yes.
we want to rely more on visual cues, checklists. If you have defects, if something's wrong with an airbag, you're talking about a death. And so
that's right.
If we have more than one in a row, all that goes into a box and we shut down the line. So I think it's really valuable what you're describing. I'm a project manager. I've been in project management for 20 years. And one of the things that we did in software development was stand-ups, the agile methodology, right? You get your 15-minute stand-up, and that way your meetings are more productive. You're asking, what did you do yesterday? What are you doing today? And what are your roadblocks? And then you're in and out in 15 minutes, as opposed to everybody sitting down. The whole point was stay standing up because no one wants to stand for too long. So I really appreciate what you're outlining here. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing that. You got great experience there. And, I commend you for that. It really is. And that's something that my staff has learned to enjoy. We do stand-up meetings. They are shorter. They're more to the point, and the conversation's much better as a result. Any other thoughts or questions?
I have another one. I don't want to be.
You're fine.
Oh, okay. So I'm curious. So I'm extremely passionate about leadership. So I'm also curious to know, like, what did you do to prepare yourself to step out and as far as leading this new initiative? I'm a firm believer that just because you're in a leadership position doesn't mean that the leadership learning stops. It's always, right? I mean, you're always wanting to reflect and educate and become a better leader yourself. So what did you do to develop yourself for this process?
Excellent question, Donalisa. And at the heart of TPS is all about leadership development. And I've had to retrain myself. In fact, I had to kind of sit back with the staff. I'm a retired Air Force colonel, and being the founder of the organization, I can sometimes be a little bossy if I wanted to be, just being frank with you. What I really have had to learn to do, and this is something that TPS teaches, is if I want to grow problem solvers, I can't solve problems for them. I have to help them learn how to solve problems. And so I've had to retrain myself to not give direction, but to ask questions. And it can be slower in the near term, but in the long term, I'm growing stronger leaders. And I'm having to, even yesterday, working on how do I make sure I'm asking the right questions? Because I kept saying, okay, where do you see a problem? And the staff was being quiet. They weren't saying anything. So what I've had to learn, and I was reading a book called Managing to Learn. This is about what's called the A3 process, written by a guy named John Shook. And I was asking the wrong question. The question I should have been asking is, where do you see waste? Where are we not adding value to the customer? Very different question. And it's like I was using one key to unlock, try it and open the door, and it wasn't working. So I changed the key, and the key worked. And it just, now I'm not telling them what to do. I'm making them think and helping them become a problem solver. And that helps them grow as a leader. So really becoming much more focused on coaching and mentoring as opposed to telling and doing, which is, I have 28 years of experience of telling and doing, which kind of worked out okay. I mean, I made colonel, but that won't work here. And that's the great thing about having Toyota on site, is seeing them work together is very, very different than what I usually see in the business world. They're very frank. They're very candid. They ask really blunt questions, but it's not adversarial. It's no, I'm trying to help you be better. And one of the things you learn very quickly is you have to have a big shot of humility when you start this process. And they say that if you're going to get upset about being asked hard questions, then you're not a good fit for Toyota. And that was kind of the questions they were asking us, is if you're not going to come into this process with some humility, we're not going to work with you. And so I think, going back to your question, I've had to learn to be a better and different leader to make this work. If I wanted to be an authoritarian, it wouldn't work.
Yeah, I completely understand that, having served 20 years in the military myself. And it was very, I mean, you know, it's a directorship, and it's being very, you know, this is what you need to do and this is how you need to do it.
Right.
And I think it's exciting to see, you know, how you've grown as a leader. And part of that process too is, I think, really stepping out in trust. It's trusting the people that you've got in these positions and empowering them to learn how to be problem solvers, and being willing to kind of step back and let them grow as a leader. And that's a big thing. That's hard to do, to kind of be hands off and kind of watch that unfold and be there to coach and
Right.
mentor.
Yeah, that's a great point, Donalisa. And it's not laissez-faire. I'm not saying, oh, you know, just show me the results. I had people when I was in the corporate world say, Pat, don't tell me how much it hurts, to show me the baby. Direct quote. That's not this. This is asking those questions, but I'm not going to do your work for you, and I'm not going to solve the problem for you. You've got to go through the process, and it's all about process. So, excellent point.
I have to agree with both of you. The perspective of more of a directive leadership style from both of you having been in the military. I reported to my very first manager was a lieutenant from the Marines. And so we learned very quickly what chain of command meant and how to fall in line. And so we're very good friends to this day. I'm his child's godmother, but I learned very quickly how he expected things to run. And it was very, very regimented. And to your point, Pat and Donalisa, when you step into corporate life, it's very, very different. You're not going to get very far with cracking a whip at people, shifting your leadership style to your point of reading a book and actually trying to get some other, flex a different muscle, right? That you weren't flexing as much in the military. Now you're in this mentoring, coaching. Let's talk about why you're going to do things differently. Let's talk about how you're going to lead this yourself, because that's why I hired you. You're a smart person. You're not an automaton. So I expect you to flex that muscle yourself. And, you know, going back to the lean principles, although 5 whys is more about root cause, that's also a way to try to figure out, well, why are you doing it that way? So then tell me why you did it that way, and continuing to ask your staff those questions to push them in the direction of thinking a little bit differently. So, you know, kudos. I don't meet a lot of leaders who say, you know, I got to figure out how to mentor and coach. Most of the time it's, you know, the whole adage of, you know, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so you just continue to bang away and expect people to change their behavior, and they won't. So, you know, I think it's awesome that you looked at yourself differently as a leader and said, you know what, let me focus a little bit more on mentoring and coaching.
Thank you. You know, what really spawned me to do this was a realization of, you know, I started the organization. I could almost say I've hammered almost every nail. But seeing what happened with my mom's store and my dad's business after they moved out, it didn't do well. And I didn't want Serve Denton to be something that was, you know, oh, Pat's, you know, leaving at some point. I'm not going to leave for probably another 7 or 8 years. as long as the board will have me. But I wanted to create an organization that would sustain itself for, forevermore, or whenever things just come to an end. But I knew to do that, I needed to build the organization's muscle so that when I'm gone, other than my office being empty, there's no impact. And that takes time. And something nonprofits aren't often good at, and small businesses aren't often good at, is succession planning. And how do you train the next leadership team to step in? And when you look at organizations like Toyota, they've gone through generations of leadership and have stayed the course, and they've had their little dips along the way, but by and large, very, very successful. Or they've had one unprofitable year in 57 years. Show me another organization that's done that. There isn't. So thanks for the feedback.
I think that has a lot to say about ego, Pat. It's understanding that it's moving aside we all want our organizations to flourish, and we all want to be a part of that. And we want to leave a legacy, so to speak. But I think that we as leaders have to move our ego out of the way and say, I want this place to continue when I'm gone. And the way that I do that is I humble myself and I hand the keys and I teach the tools for this organization to continue. And I think sometimes people, they don't let that ego get out of the way. They would rather, they want somebody to feel the impact when they leave. They want to have that, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe Pat's gone. What are we going to do now? When it should be, Pat's gone, he's trained us up, and we're ready to continue moving forward in the way that he taught us how to, and making this organization better. So I think that speaks volumes to yourself as a leader and your character, that you're willing to step aside your own ego for the benefit of your organization.
Thank you. That means a lot. I appreciate it.
I have a quick question for you. So we've been discussing a lot about tools and resources to use when the organization or nonprofit is already built, and then how to more efficiently manage it and be better leaders. So what tools and resources would you recommend for people kind of at square one of that, of still just kind of planning out the business or nonprofit?
Right. That's the question that the people in Plano asked me yesterday. They literally said, we've got a gentleman who's offered us 2,200 square feet. We don't know what to do. We don't even have an organization. What do we do first? And the first question I asked them is, well, how are you going to govern? What's your governance structure? And that's a question that applies to every organization, whether you're a small business or a nonprofit or even a government agency. And I think it's one of those areas where a lot of people don't give it a lot of thought. I know my parents struggled with that early on. They've ended up forming a corporation that still exists. But so I think the first question is determine how you're going to be, what your governance structure is going to be. Are you going to be a sole proprietorship? Are you going to be an S corporation, a C corporation? And those are technical terms that take some time to understand, but they do have major implications on how you move forward. Then the next question that came up is, well, what's the first thing we do? And I said, well, the first thing we did is we spent the first year just working on a strategic plan. And my board, the board at the time was a little like, well, why don't we just start doing stuff? And I said, we got to make sure we have the infrastructure in place before we start doing stuff. And the strategic plan will help us do that. We literally spent 2012 and part of 2013 just building a strategic plan. It was not, a piece of paper that we knocked out in a couple of days. a lot of hard conversations, but I can show you that strategic plan today, and everything we put in that plan, we've accomplished. And it really was instrumental in guiding us. And I've given that plan to other people and said, this is what we did. We had to talk to a lot of people. There was a lot of resistance at the beginning of Serve Denton. Like, well, we just, we don't need another nonprofit. You guys are just going to take money away from the other organizations, things like that. My answer was no, we're going to make, you say the pie is this big. I'm here to make the pie this big so everyone gets a bigger slice. And that's exactly what we've done. I mean, we brought in $4.5 million of investment outside of Denton County into Denton County for nonprofit organizations. That's the kinds of things that you're able to do when you build the scale and have that strategic plan. And I had guys like Stan Morton, who was the CEO of Texas Health, brilliant guy. I'm having lunch with him and Mary Ann tomorrow. But the board was patient enough to do that. And so that when we started working, we weren't working towards tomorrow. We were working 8-10 years down the road. And that we did some things in the beginning that would help us become investment worthy when we were ready. And that's exactly what happened. So I don't have a recipe other than think about governance, which is a strategic decision. The second question is, how are you going to generate revenue? That's a strategic decision. And the third is what is the infrastructure that you have to build to make this viable? Like the first year we did, I knew that at some point we would need really good financials. And so we started from the beginning having audits done. Most nonprofits starting out don't have an audit done. And I said, I'm going to insist on it because my books have got to be solid if I'm going to be investment worthy. And it's true. When you go to US Bank and ask for $3 million, they want to see your financials back 10 years. And to show that we had audited books back 10 years, even when it was only $80,000, it gave them a high degree of confidence. Wow, you guys really are doing a good job on financial management. Those kinds of things. It's that building that credit worthiness over time. And you just can't say, give me money and they're going to give it to you because you asked for it. You got to show that you're credit worthy. And how do you do that? So that's not a great answer, but it's the best answer I got.
Oh, that's a good answer. Lacey says, Pat, do you find that audit has a negative connotation, and how do you deal with that if so?
In a financial world, no. I mean, and if your personal taxes, that might be negative, but within the financial world, auditors are, they may be joked about, but they're respected. I have a daughter-in-law who's an auditor. She's a CPA, but it's not interesting. It's not exciting. And that's why it's infrastructure. It's building the bones of the organization. It's putting in the financial discipline early on, because that's what the audit really is doing, is it's putting in the financial discipline to make sure that you're doing everything using generally accepted accounting principles, GAAP. If you don't start off that way, I can tell you about multi-million-dollar churches today in this town who aren't GAAP, and they're struggling to get there, and it's incredibly painful. Incredibly painful. Because it goes back to, I think Stacy said, we've always done it this way. Well, that doesn't make it right. It just means that's what you chose to do. So making sure you're doing it the right way from the beginning, again, goes back to this whole idea of eliminating waste. An audit in itself is not value added, but it lets you do things that allow you to add value. Does that make sense? So most most small businesses don't have audits, but if you're a nonprofit, as painful as it might be starting out, if not have an audit, have at least a CPA sign off on your books, not just print out something from QuickBooks and call it good. And Anderson Spector is great on McKinney, KHA, Mark Murky, Rob C on Locust. Those are all top-notch accounting firms here in town.
Awesome. We are just about at 10. Does anyone else have any questions or comments for Pat? Feel free to jump in if you do. No? Okay. Well, right. I'm going to go ahead and close out the meeting then to be respectful of everybody's time. Yeah, and thank you, Donalisa, for attending. Thank you, everybody, for attending. And most of all, thank you to Pat. This has been really enlightening and very helpful. And I hope we can do this again sometime. Yeah.
You ever want to take a tour, just hit me up, and love to give you one. Or if you want to talk about lean or leadership, I love to talk about leadership. Donalisa, I think you and I need to go out and just compare notes, and love to talk to you about that as well.
I'd love that.
Or gardening. I'm also president of Shiloh Field Community Garden, so if you want to talk about gardening, I'm in the gardening. So.
I might take you up on that.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Well, have a great rest of your morning and hope to see you next week. We're going to have Amanda Sweet leading next week's Coffee and Convos. So see y'all later.
All right. Take care.
Bye, everyone.